Hey Josh, so the other day I was in class with our latest and greatest batch of paramedic students, and I noticed something. We're working on advanced airway management, and I noticed that one of them kept struggling with working way too fast. I could tell he was, really anxious, and it just reminded me of myself when I was a new paramedic about getting anxious about advanced airway management. So what I was always worried about was that patient desatting. There's obviously a lot of different things that we can do about that, but I want to ask you, as a critical care paramedic, what's one of your opinion about some important steps in advanced airway management?
Well, one of the big ones is just preoxygenating, and not just preoxygenating our patient, preoxygenating ourselves, taking a slow, deep breath just to help us calm down a little bit, slow down, and just really think about what we're doing, and just taking that breath ourselves. I do that even today. When I get in those high acuity, critical situations, like, all right, I just need a deep breath, get a little extra oxygen in myself so I can think a little bit more clearly, and then we'll take care of the patient.
Okay.
When it comes to preoxygenating our patients, if we're going to be taking an airway and intubating somebody, we want to first overload them or hyperoxygenate them and get as much oxygen into the body as possible. Because once we push our medicines and that patient becomes apneic, they might be apneic for several minutes while we get the airways situated, get the intubation done, and so we want to have as much reserve capacity as we can. So if I can force oxygen in through the nose, through non-rebreather, through CPAP, whatever measures that we end up using, it just gives us a little bit more reserve time in case something goes haywire.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because like you mentioned, apnea. So with apneic oxygenation, we can unload oxygen with apnea. With the partial pressures, we'll actually force that oxygen into the body and allow the patient to not desat, even when they've been paralyzed.
Yeah, and there's several studies out there that are saying 30, 40, 60 liters per minute of oxygenation is enough. It causes enough air to get in there that even with apnea, they're still offloading carbon dioxide and onloading oxygen down in the alveoli.
Okay.
You just have to force it in, have a high enough peak level that you force that in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So with that as well, we're also trying to wash out nitrogen, carbon dioxide, get rid of all of the excess waste in the lungs and in the upper airway, and just increase all of that reserve capacity that we can. First thing we're going to do probably is, no matter how healthy the patient is, go ahead and put them on a nasal cannula. This will get the process started. It's easy, it's comfortable for everybody. Throw them on a nasal cannula at 15 liters per minute, at least 15 liters per minute. That's going to cause a lot of oxygen to go in the nose, and it'll actually start forcing it down in the trachea and down in there.
And we're talking about something like this for someone that, I think you mentioned it a minute ago, but we're going to take their airway, right?
Yeah.
This is not just a routine.
Right, yeah, this is not going to be your cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
That's going to be an emergent type crash airway. This is going to be just something that we're able to foresee it coming, a few minutes leeway there. Yeah, so we're going to do that. Then the next, ideally, if they have an intrinsic respiratory rate still breathing adequately volume-wise, then we can just put them on a non-rebreather to go with it.
Okay.
Put that non-rebreather on at 15 liters per minute. So now we've got 15 liters per minute nasal cannula and 15 liters per minute non-rebreather.
Okay.
So we're at 30 liters per minute. That's a lot of oxygen. Another tool we can use is CPAP as a great kind of just short-term pre-oxygenation tool.
Okay.
It gets a good mask seal. If we need to switch that over to a BVM, we've already got the mask in place. And just another tool we can use for pre-oxygenation.
Okay.
If they are not breathing adequately, the respiratory rate is 0 or something like that, then instead of using our non-rebreather here, we'll still keep the nasal cannula on. We'll just use a BVM.
Okay.
Get that good mask seal, and then we're giving high flow oxygen through the BVM and nasal cannula as well. The goal with all of this, like we said, is just building up that reserve capacity, so whenever they are truly apneic and we're we're trying to intubate them, we have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah. So it seems like what you're telling me, in a lot of patients, it would extend that time of desaturation. What about sick people? What about like respiratory compromised type people?
Respiratory compromise is almost going to be kind of that crash airway type situation. It might help a little bit. It's definitely not going to hurt. But from what the studies are showing at this point, it's not really going to help very much. But if it gives us an extra 15, 30 seconds,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Those are going to be those sick patients.
Right.
So just slowing down and making sure we can pre-oxygenate as best we can.
Okay.
That's going to be the key with that. So after we have pre-oxygenated, we're going to ideally do it, get SpO2 readings greater than 95% for 3 to 5 minutes. Got that whole nitrogen washout, CO2 out, got as much oxygen in there as we can. We've built up that reserve capacity. Then we will move on to intubation.
Okay.
So whenever we are thinking about setting up our intubation, I'm going to set this aside. We got a laryngoscope here. Some laryngoscopes have a channel down the side of them for a suction tubing, or suction tubing generally. You can take the suction tubing, just run it down the edge.
Okay.
And then if you get in there and they've got vomit, blood, something in the airway, well then you just suction it out.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, you can also take the suction tubing and just hook it up to O2 tubing.
Okay.
It works both ways. So then I can hook this up 15 liters per minute, and then I am blowing air into them right here at the tip of my laryngoscope blade. If your laryngoscope does not have a channel, this one doesn't really, it kind of nestles in there.
Yeah.
I could either take this in here, or I could use a Yonker or Decanto suction catheter and do the same thing. This will hook up to an O2 tubing. And I can blow air in. Again, if I get in there, got vomit, blood, I can just simply hook it up to suction and come back out with it.
So once again, it's just a whole nother way of just forcing more O2 in there.
Just getting as much oxygen in there as you can.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the simple process of it for the most part. Of course, you want to make sure you might have to practice a little bit with your technique and how to hold the blade and the suction catheter, all that. During your intubation attempt, you're going to keep that nasal cannula on 15 liters per minute. You're going to force all that oxygen in there. You've got your O2 tubing hooked up to this as well, 15 liters per minute. And then I've got somebody who's monitoring my monitor and watching those SpO2 readings. I want to know if that drops down to 95%, 93%, 92. If I hit 90, I'm coming back out. I need to pre-oxygenate again and work my way back up. Once I get that in there, I've got my head of bed elevated, so it helps keep everything in line. It makes the intubation attempt usually a lot easier, having your head of bed elevated.
Yeah, because that ramping, we've decided, really helps to align the axes, right? So you can get a much better shot at the airway the time you take.
Yeah. With this one, you just put in your ET tube, get that past the vocal cords. I'm coming back out, removing my stylet, and inflating my cup. And then we'll just start backing them. Using our BVM. And then at that point, I can turn off my nasal cannula. Go ahead and either take it off or cut it off, whatever you need to do. You no longer need it. So you can do that. That's pretty much the process for pre-oxygenation.
Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about apneic oxygenation, which we'll link some studies with this video too that have some great information with. We've talked about basically hyperoxygenating, right? Not hyperventilating, but hyperoxygenating, just getting onloading as much, achieving nitrogen washout, pushing all of that stuff out, pushing all the oxygen in to give us a little more time and hopefully a little more calmness whenever we're about to take an airway, because that's a lot of responsibility, right? Whenever we take an airway. It's one thing when somebody quits breathing on their own. When we cause it, it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and if you have a relatively healthy individual that you pre-oxygenated appropriately, you're given high flow nasal cannula, even high flow non-breather, and they go apneic, that you have, some studies are even showing 30 minutes of them not breathing on their own, and they're still maintaining SpO2 readings that are adequate. So that's very significant. You don't get that luxury with the sick, but with a healthier individual,
Great.
Yeah.